Today, let's talk about how to find out if someone died with any assets. Does this sound like you? Oh, my uncle or grandfather or some other relative died, and I think he left me something, but how do I find out for sure if there's any assets and if I should set up an estate? So, we get these calls all the time, and today we're going to talk about why a lawyer isn't the best person to call quite yet, a few things you can do on your own to figure out if there are any assets, and when it's appropriate to hire a professional. All right. Now let's start by talking about why you shouldn't start off by calling a lawyer. Number one, lawyers are expensive, right? And this isn't really what lawyers do. This is more investigating and digging. So we get a lot of calls asking, is there a centralized database or is there somewhere like in the court records that a lawyer can check to see if my uncle, for example, died with any assets? That's not really how it works. There is a sort of database that we'll talk about a little later on, but the question that you mean, can I hire a lawyer to check the court records or the public records to find out if my uncle had any assets? That's not how it works. So you don't want to waste money paying an attorney at their kind of very high hourly rates relative to other professionals, when you could just do some digging and investigation on your own, and we'll get into that now. All right. So you want to investigate on your own, and the first place you want to check is the probate court. So probate court is where where you go to set up an estate. So you're going to the probate court to check, number one, was there a will? Did uncle die? Did your uncle die with a will? And has somebody already submitted it to the court to start opening up the estate process? Now, one thing you need to understand, and excuse me, once you figure out if you figure out an estate has already been opened, then you just call the executor and say, hey, where's my share? And the executor will be the one who's collecting and reporting what assets there are out there. And you can kind of just be a beneficiary and figure out, okay, executor, here I am. I'm named in the will. Please give me my share when the time is appropriate. Now, here's one issue with probate court records. In most counties and states, you can't do this online. I know we're all used to being able to click, and get all the information we want. That's because probate records and deceased individuals' information is a little sensitive. You have to go down to the courthouse. You can't log in from the browser. That being said, once you go down there, it's pretty easy to use, at least in New York and in the greater New York area, and the court clerks are often helpful if you have any questions on how to navigate or where to click or how to search. They're usually pretty helpful. Now, what if you're out of state and it's kind of costly or difficult for you to get into the let's say New York to search the court records? That's not impossible to deal with. Again, don't hire an attorney. We can be expensive for what you're trying to get done here. Instead, hire a process server company. And process servers are those guys who hand deliver court papers to people who are being sued, but they also do other things such as searching and picking up court files, and it's called pickup service. So what you would do is, let's say you're from California and you want to find out if your uncle who died living in Kings County in Brooklyn, you want to find out if he has an estate. You Google Brooklyn or Kings County process server, and then you just go onto their websites and see if they have pickup service. It should cost, I don't know, between 30 and maybe 70 or 80 bucks to pick up a file, plus usually I think $6 per page. They charge it, but it's still way cheaper than hiring an attorney. Okay? So again, if you're out of state, contact a process server and they can do the pickup for you. Next. All right, so you think your uncle had an account with, let's just say, Chase, as an example. Or it could be a life insurance policy, any financial institution, brokerage. You can call the bank, call the financial institution, and ask. Now, they're not really supposed to release this information. I mean, this is private information. How would you like it if somebody called and said, let's say your name is Bill. Oh, I just call Chase Bank and say, hey, does Bill have an account with you, and how much is in it? I'm pretty sure you don't want them to release that information. But there are, human beings on the other side of the phone, and if you sort of use a little bit of savvy and maybe a little bit of begging and a little bit of sweet talk, you might be able to get some information. And it would go something like this: hi, my name is Bill. My uncle passed away, and I think he has an account with Chase, but I think that's all he has. and I don't want to hire an attorney to open up an estate unless I know for sure that there are some assets. Can you please help me out and just tell me, does my uncle, my uncle whose name is this and whose social security number is this and who died on this date, can you just tell me, does he have an account, right? And then if they say yes, then you say, oh, cool. How much is it? And just keep probing and get as much information as you can. Same thing with life insurance, brokerage. Again, you might have a 50% a 50% success rate, but again, just give it a shot. So that's for banks and financial accounts. In terms of real estate, you want to just check the public records, check for the deed. If your uncle lived in the house that he owned, let's use Kings County or Brooklyn as an example, you're going to check the Register of Deeds for Brooklyn. Here in New York, all 5 boroughs are under a system called ACRIS, ACRIS, and in pretty much everywhere else in the United States, you check the county plus. So you would just go to Google, and you would type, let's say, let's call it Springfield County, which is from The Simpsons, Springfield plus Register of Deeds, right? And that's how you'll find the URL or the website for the Register of Deeds. And it might not be that easy. So you would check maybe county clerk and Springfield, or property records Springfield. And, you know how to use Google, right? Yeah, I hope so. It shouldn't be too difficult. And you can just, most of these are all online. They're real. I mean, for the vast majority of property records are online. It's pretty searchable. You'll see a PDF of the actual deed. If you have trouble understanding it, call a realtor, or maybe at that point when you see a deed with your uncle's name on it, maybe that might be a point to call an attorney and evaluate the situation, right? One caveat, New York has a lot of property in the form of a cooperative apartments. So co-ops are technically not real estate, so they won't show up in ACRIS or the similar public records. So you need to treat these more like we talked about with the banks and financial institutions. You need to call the co-op building and do the asking, begging, savvy, sweet talk deal again. Hi, my uncle lived in your building. I want to make sure that it's worth worth paying an attorney to set up an estate. Did he own his shares? Did he own them as a joint owner with somebody, with his second wife or anything like that? Can you please just help me out? I don't want to spend a lot of money on an attorney if I don't have to. And again, that'll work maybe about half the time. All right. Next, you want to call your uncle's advisors. They might know. They might have more information than you. If you know who his tax preparer was, call that person. If he might have past tax returns and would be maybe willing to share where your uncle had accounts. Call his attorney. Maybe his attorney would know if he had a will, what some of his final estate planning may have been. If your uncle had a realtor, call that dude as well, or lady, and see if he had recently bought or sold real estate. That would be another great clue. Same with financial advisors, investment advisors. It's really just piecing together and investigating and digging and putting together a puzzle of your uncle's financial picture, right, or history. Next, you want to check unclaimed funds. Okay. For anyone who's not familiar, unclaimed funds are government entities that hold and store money that have been dormant or uncashed for too long. And I'll give you a couple of examples. If a bank account has been dormant, meaning no checks in and out for, I think the rules are different, so don't quote me on this, but 2 or 3 years, and then they send a letter saying, hey, is your account active? You got to let us know. Call us at this number, or log in and do something. And if nothing happens for a set amount of time, I think it's usually 2 or 3 years, then by state law, and it varies by state to state, the bank will have to send the money to the state entity. In New York, it's called the comptroller's office, to hold on behalf of the unclaiming person, in this case, your uncle. Another example would be uncashed checks. If your uncle owned stocks where he was collecting dividends, as paper checks, and they just weren't getting cashed, again, the company that was issuing the dividends, they can't just take the money back. They have to sort of lump up all those unpaid dividends and put them in unclaimed funds on behalf of your uncle's name. So for the case of New York, you would just go to the Unclaimed Funds website, click around. I mean, look, you'll see here on the website, it's right there on the front page in a big orange button, search now for any unclaimed money of yours. You just put in your name and you'll reference that against addresses, meaning, let's say your uncle had a very common name, Bill Smith. Wait, I called you Bill, so now the uncle is Bill too? It's confusing, but so Bill Smith, let's say you knew he lived at 123 Main Street in Brooklyn. and you check unclaimed funds, there's going to be a bunch of Bill Smiths and William Smiths. So you need to narrow it down by the Bill Smiths or William Smiths that had a connecting address to 123 Main Street. And there'll be similar systems for every state. New York is one of the bigger ones, but you can, again, just Google unclaimed funds Florida, unclaimed funds Texas, whatever the case may be. All right? And that's how you will check if there's any unclaimed funds. By the way, they don't list amounts, not on the website at least. So once you've gotten a hit, once you found out, oh, hey, Uncle did have an unclaimed fund, you can call them and sort of dig a little bit. And I believe after you prove who you are and whatnot, they will give you an amount. The last step is about when to hire a PI or private investigator. So I know this sounds a little cliche. You might be thinking of, from the movies, private investigators, not, I guess investigating celebrity divorces or doing other things. I'm sure they do that as well. But the reason a private investigator is useful in this scenario is private investigators or licensed private investigators have access to many tools that you and I will never have access to, right? And what I'm talking about is special access to the credit agency databases amongst other things. They can search and find and dig up information that you'll never be able to find, right? And I mean, if you Google somebody's name and you get all these results that say, "Hey, for $30, we'll give you the full report," that's those are not very effective, and you just wasted $30, right? The databases that the private investigators have access to are at a far different level. It's just apples and oranges, all right? So if you really want to find out something, and you want or confirm something, you're going to hire a private investigator. And we're talking about a few $100s to do a search, depending on what you're trying to get. I mean, you can do. I think they do a financial dossier on your person's social security number for, maybe $300 to $500. I'm trying to give you a ballpark range. I can't really pin it down exactly, but for, let's say, $300 to $500, you can get a financial dossier on your uncle. So why would you do this? Number one, if you're getting clues from the banks or the co-ops or the deeds or the courts, but you still haven't ascertained the amount, it might be worth paying a PI $300 to $500 before dropping, $4,000 to $5,000 on an attorney. It's about managing your risk there, yeah. Or if you're not finding anything through your own private search, but you feel deep in your heart, like just based on family lore or conversations, look, no, Uncle had something. This is not, just because I can't find it doesn't mean it's not out there. This might be your last resort to confirm, look, did Uncle have something or not? And I'm going to dig deep, put up the $300, $500 and have a professional private investigator confirm or deny that Uncle had some money. Okay? So that's your final step, going with a PI. If you do find assets, you'll probably need to open an estate, and that the process is called probate. And that's when you'll want to consult with an attorney. Hey, look, I've confirmed that my uncle did have some assets. I am one of the heirs. I am the nephew. How do I get started? Am I entitled to anything? That's when you would contact an attorney for a consultation to figure out what are the next steps. If you want to learn more about that process in general, pick up a copy of my book, How Probate Works, available on Amazon, bestseller. Thank you. And otherwise, that's all I have for today. Again, that's how to find out if someone died with any assets. Hope you found this useful. Talk to you again soon. Take care.